Wow. Here we are working with fame and shame. Fame and spirituality make unhealthy bedfellows, you could say. We all like to do things well, and when we do, we feel really good about ourselves. So it is with meditation practice. It's human nature. How many times has a little hint of pride crept in when you've told someone you were a meditator? Or you've told them how long you've been meditating, right? Well, there's usually this little air of superiority inside when we're talking about our spirituality, our spiritual practice. Don't worry, really, you're not alone. It's the ego that's jockeying for position. We may not seek fame, but we do seek to have a good reputation and to feel well regarded. But we can get stuck in our achievements and our attainments, feel prideful about our ability to sit still, to be peaceful, to meditate, to arrive at a certain amount of concentration or refined state of mind. The ego knows no shame, as they say, and therein lies the problem. We, our egos, have gotten involved in our meditation practice, and when that happens, it's no longer about letting go of obstacles, it's about acquiring esteem. We want to see this sleight of hand by the mind because it interferes with practice. This is what Chogyam Rinpoche called spiritual materialism. He suggests that there are three ways in which this appears in our practice. Physical materialism is the belief that the physical possessions that we have will make us happy, like buying into the spiritual marketplace, going on endless workshops and retreats, buying tools, buying statues, bells, incense, all of that will make us wiser, happier, more spiritual. Psychological materialism is the second one, the belief that a particular philosophy, ideology, or political viewpoint will make us happy. And then the spiritual materialism of mistaking temporary states of peace that we arrive at through meditation practice or through the use of drugs will have lasting happiness. Be careful. In all three cases, the underlying problem is the ego. You see, it's the ego's job to protect us. So it finds subtle ways of reinforcing this sense of self. That's its function, which is the antithesis of what meditation practice is aiming to do. So if we don't see the ego's maneuverings, it will eventually interfere in our practice. It will be a hindrance, a limitation, a liability to seeing clearly, which is the point of practice. How can we respond skillfully if we don't see clearly? Fame builds ego even further. It deludes us into believing that we're special because the outside world keeps reinforcing that idea that the self is exceptional or superior to others in some way. And our Western culture certainly doesn't help. It tells us that fame and fortune are good and should be sought after. And I ask, does Donald Trump look happy to you? Danger, Will Robinson. Don't believe the hype. Anything that causes us to be prideful, to feel more deserving or desirous than others, interferes with practice. Bill frequently refers to this quote by a Tibetan master who says, I'll paraphrase, I can sit on the throne all day long, but if someone gives me a little bit of praise, my heart swells. And if someone gives me a little bit of criticism, my heart sinks. The master is aware of what the ego is doing. Right? They may not be beyond it, but they are aware of it. We are learning to cop on to our habits to be seen as special and unique. In today's world, this is more challenging than ever, given the advent of social media, which makes it easier to achieve this kind of fame in the past, right, than in the past. We humans are social and hierarchical beings. We want to secure our place in the order of things. But the aim of meditation practice is to see through these maneuverings of the self, of the ego that wants to acquire and build up a sense of self. When Bill and I first began teaching retreats, years ago, I found it very hard to read the feedback that people gave. We'd literally get in the car, open up the packet, and begin reading the reviews on the way home. Oh my gosh, that is so not a good idea. Talk about swinging between highs and the lows. My ego would immediately get caught up in praise and blame, in feeling prideful about the positive feedback and bad or shameful about the negative feedback. One bad review would overshadow everything. One bad review. Oh, and I could see the worldly wind, but it still hurt. It still does. It still does, but not as much. It took and still takes practice to stay balanced, remembering that not everyone will appreciate what I offer, but that it doesn't have to be a commentary on me personally or somehow a declaration of truth. One person's opinion is just that, one person's opinion. It matters, but it can now be put into perspective. How? Well, it's taken a lot of practice, a lot of pulling out of my own personal way of assessing the world and remembering to step into a mindful view, to have mindfulness, bring mindfulness to bear on the matter. Now, why is that important, that shift out of Susan and into mindfulness? Because mindfulness isn't trying to build up a sense of Susan. Mindfulness is in training attention to caringly see and feel more clearly from a less judgmental perspective. It recognizes that there are many opinions. Susan's only one of them. Susan has her opinions, others have their opinions, but no one's cornered the market on reality. No one's opinion. Mindfulness is a decidedly different perspective than Susan. Mindfulness is a non-judgmental posture of friendly, caring attention that sees and feels from this less identified perspective. It entrains equanimity. It entrains balance as much as is available. It builds on what is available. And that's been the greatest support for me. It's the greatest support for us, so we don't get lost in praise and blame or fame and shame. Mindfulness doesn't use praise to build up a sense of self or use criticism or blame to feel bad about the self. It takes us out of our personal view, out of Susan, out of our personal view, and into a different perspective, a perspective that is caring and non-judgmental, a posture of a dear friend or a wise elder, as if they were looking on the situation. And then Susan can be seen. Where she gets hooked can be seen, as well as her efforts, her abilities, and her intentions. Mindfulness helps us to see the self, to see our narcissistic tendencies and not feed them. That's where the freedom is, in not believing what our egos are saying about us or others. They are opinions, not truths. Opinions. In reality, we all have praiseworthy and blameworthy qualities. Seeing them through the lens of mindfulness frees us from the suffering that comes from buying into them. That's the good news. The good news is that we can do this. We can train ourselves to step out of the narrow straits of our personality and step into a wider, kinder, less judgmental posture of caring attention. We can do this. This is for our welfare.